There we go. Okay. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about competence. I've talked a little bit about character and trust and manipulation versus coercion and what leadership is. But I want to go one step further and start delving into some of the 5 C's, which is some characteristics of leadership that are important, which you probably will understand and appreciate. So let me start out with this, but we'll talk about competence. Close that. Okay. Okay. So if you guys can see the screen, the thing with competence is competency is it's something that you do and you do very well. So you are very competent at whatever it might be. Could be competent at sports, could be competent at baseball, or could be competent in hockey or whatever it is. Could be competent as a student, doing very good as a student. Could be competent in cooking, whatever your skill is, whatever your passion is. So here's the thing. When it comes down to competence, probably the key part of all of this is the top line that's on the slide. Identify your strengths and delegate your weaknesses. What does that mean? So later in the semester, you're going to identify your strengths, the strengths of you. So you do some things really well and other things you don't do very well. Well, your strengths are going to be those things that you do really well. So normally in an evaluation or a review, you're going to meet with your boss, or your boss is going to say to you, here are your strengths and here's where you need to improve. You could easily turn around and say, well, these are my strengths. This is why I was hired. Or these are my strengths. This is what I'm really good at. Why not just delegate my weaknesses? Just share them with other people. Why? Because other people have the strengths that you don't. So if you can find those people, let's say, for example, that you're a really good people person. You're good at sales. You're good at talking to people. You're good at comforting people, maybe even social work, whatever it might be. You're really good at helping people and connecting with people. But numbers really isn't your thing. You're not really a good math person, finance, accounting, stuff like that. That's just not me. I don't do math. Well, find somebody who is a good accountant, who may not be a people person. You can interact with those people. So again, identify those strengths and then delegate your weaknesses. Or another way to put it is only do what only you can do. So only do what only you can do. So if there maybe, you're probably like me, you have 40 different things on your to-do list to get done. It's an interesting perspective if you stop and say, okay, which one of these 40 things that I have to do, only I can do? So is there a way to delegate other responsibilities to other people? If you're a leader, that's a good way to go, or else you'll be inundated with the little things that other people can do as well. So again, that delegate your weaknesses, delegate to other people those responsibilities. Leverage yourself toward your strengths. So that's why you were hired. That's why the value you bring to an organization, the value you bring to yourself. If strengths bring results, why focus on where you're mediocre? Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't improve, but it does mean that you shouldn't always take the negative parts to heart. Why exactly was I hired for this position? Why exactly am I in this role? Why exactly, what do I do in this job, in my sorority, my fraternity, whatever it is, right? Know your strengths. That's why it's important to know your strengths. So I'm talking about delegation a little bit. Delegate your weaknesses to other team members. Your weaknesses, again, are someone else's strengths. The more you delegate your weaker roles, the more effective you are as a leader. Think about that. If you focus only on your strengths and what you do best, you're going to be amazing. And they'll be excellent. So the secret to concentration is elimination. If you could eliminate those things that you don't necessarily like to do, or those things that you're not great at, then you can focus more time on the things that you want to do and that you can do and that you do really well. So there's this idea of just delegating to other people what's there. So what's available, what has to be done, and then becoming a better leader yourself. So focus on strengths encourage you to bring more value to the organization. You're more valuable where you add the most value. If 80% of your successes come from 20% of your effort, Pareto rule, then imagine how productive you'd be if you focus on your strengths with 80% of your effort. So what do you do really well? Like, what are your soft skills? What are your hard skills? Difference is soft skills are often people skills, right? It's hard to judge, hard to tell what they are. Hard skills are more analytical, writing, looking at data, etc. So if 80% of what you do is usually not your strengths, imagine what would happen if you just focused your 80% or 100% or whatever on what you do well. You'd be a better leader. So there are many things you can do. Focus on 1 to 3 things that you can do to provide value. Now, stop and think about that. What are the few things that you can do to provide value? How often have you done that before? Like, let's say you're going to start a group project with a bunch of students. I don't know if that's real or not anymore in the age of COVID, but let's say that you're going to start a group project. What are you good at doing in that group project? Are you a good researcher? Are you a good writer? Are you a good note taker? Are you good at putting together a good story? Are you a good proofreader? Like, what do you do well? And try to identify what that is. And then for other people, what do they do well? And again, how great it is to be able to partner with other people that have different strengths than you, because you can identify what those strengths are, and then you can focus each on your strengths, which is not only easier for you, but probably more enjoyable. I mean, it's probably true that we do the things most often that we enjoy and that we're good at. So what are your top 3 strengths? If you had to stop right now and think about what are your top 3 strengths? What do you do best? Right. Sorry, just a second. I want to bring in more people from the waiting room. So what do you do best? There are many things, like I said, what are your top 3 weaknesses? What don't you do very well? And how do you use your strengths to benefit the work of your passions? We'll talk about this later in the semester, but model is if you can take your skills, the things that you do really well, you tie them in a Venn diagram, like 2 circles, tie them into the things that you're passionate about. Like that's your passion. That's what you do. That's what you do really well. And then if we take the third one, which is the purpose, like what is your purpose of life? Tie them all together, you've found your sweet spot. You found the area of life that you'll excel in. And if it's a job, it's something you'll never get tired of, because you're working on what you do really well, you're working on what you really enjoy, and you're working on whatever purpose you have for your long-range vision for your life, or long-range vision for your work. So interesting, different perspective and different way of looking at it. What happens when leaders don't delegate? Is a quest for balance, becoming a well-rounded person, right? So that's why I don't delegate. I want to be a little bit of everything. And there's some people that fall into that trap. Failure to distinguish between authority and competence. How often have you had a boss who was not particularly competent? They had the position, but they weren't very good at what they did, right? And sometimes they relied on you or relied on others to do what they need to do. Boy, it's easier just to go around that person and just go to the next person who is competent, right? So failure to distinguish between authority and competence. Here's what I do. Here's what I expect of myself. Oh, sorry. Not sure where I was. Forgive me, I don't know where I went. That's okay. So, why do people not do that? Right? Sometimes it's a failure to distinguish between authority and competence. And sometimes the problem is we focus only on what we think is going to be what's best for us. So if I can do what I think is best, in reality, you don't really know what you're good at. Then sometimes you're chasing after something that you're not an expert at. You're not great at it. It's something that you really want to believe that you will be, or something you really want to train for be. And again, there's nothing wrong with improving yourself, but know your strengths and weaknesses. So if you have only strengths, there are times where you'll be able to perform tasks that are outside your expertise. If you set your sights on strengths for most of your time. So know what you know, and when you don't know, it's okay to say I don't know and find somebody else who does. Focus on non-competence tasks from time to time for the good of the organization. That's fine. I remember when I used to work at Bell Labs, I used to go from the administrative level and leading a bunch of people in a factory down to the manufacturing floor on the last week of the quarter, because you want to push out as much inventory for the quarter so people, which was cell phone towers, and we could sell as many as possible so we'd increase our revenue. And what happened was I was down there with tools, putting them together, trying to make it work. So I wasn't upstairs. I was in a lab coat with everybody else, getting to know people. Hold on. And so we're trying to do that and make that happen. So now great leaders also know when to follow as well. There are times where there are situations where people just in charge of what they do, whatever task it is, and you just have to sit down and follow as well. even though you may be the leader of an organization. So for example, if you have a mailer for a fundraiser and you have to stuff envelopes for, I don't know, 5,000 people that are going out this week, it's okay to sit down and say, you know what, I'm a leader, but I'm just going to sit down here and just follow whatever they tell me to do. I want to be able to help them participate. So I'm going to stuff mailers as well. Put them in, get 5,000 done for the week, and you've helped out the organization that way. And you're not even leading. You're just a person that's helping out there. And that's fine, right? So again, know your strengths really well. So in short, questions: what defines success for you in your current employment? If you're a student, what do you do successfully as a student? How does that work? Is there alignment between what you do well, your core competencies, and the competencies necessary for you to succeed, whether it be your job or, again, as a student? What would change about you, your description about what you do, if you were given freedom to focus on the first 2 or 3 things you did really well? How would you change what you do and what value you bring? What would need to change from the current employment or current place situation where you are to focus on things that add the most value to your group? So if you're thinking of an organization you belong to, like, how could you step yourself up and get to that point? How do you bring your strengths to that feature? What do you do that's almost effortless from your perspective and scary to others? Have you ever thought about that? What scares you the most? And I don't mean like spiders or rats or anything. What scares you the most about being you? And how can you find somebody else to do something about being you? Like, for example, if you were to do something like fundraising, or you were to organize some group of people together for some event, I don't know, golf outing or dinner or something like that, what would scare you? And what would you want someone else to do for you? And then start thinking about what are the people that have those strengths. What do you wish you could get rid of? What do you want to delegate? And if you could work for free, most important question, where would you add the most value? So if you could volunteer your time, what would you want to volunteer as? Know your strengths. What's that area? How would you go about going from there? So a lot of this is just common sense. What are you competent at? What do you know really, really well? And then be able to say, I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses. How do I delegate my weaknesses? Think about how much more time you'd have, and think about how much more enjoyable you'd be. Or not be, but you would have. Just that life change if you could do a lot of things that only you could do. So that's competence. That's the first C that's listed here. Before I continue on, are there any other questions? Any questions at all? I think I have everybody in from the waiting room now. But this idea that we are competent as leaders and we're capable, we're good at what we do, but the question is, what are you good at? So forgive me, at some point I lost my track somewhere in the slides and started tangling myself up. But let me cancel out, and this is on Moodle, by the way. So let me cancel out, and then let me put our next slides in, next set. Okay, one of my favorite topics. So competence is definitely one of our areas for leadership. Let me share another one with you, and that is courage. A lot of people don't lead because they don't have the courage to lead. They think, I don't have the right skills, I don't have the right background, I've never led anyone before, I'm not sure what to do. There's a courage piece that's here, and this courage piece is huge. This is the one thing that I wish more people would have during the coronavirus crisis and really get there, is that you don't have to be an expert in anything. You just have to have the courage to lead. And I know that's hard sometimes, but really, what is the courage to lead? How do we do things so that we can reassure other people? Because right now, in the age of uncertainty, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to get sick. We don't know, is the economy going to stay up? We don't know. So instead, we have the courage to kind of lead and continue. Now, one of the best analogies I've read, and maybe it's in here, is imagine leading somebody through a dark room. So you don't know what's in the room. You don't know where you're going, but you have an idea. And all you're doing is taking somebody by the hand and you're leading them through the dark room from one door to another in the room. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to have fear. Courage does not eliminate fear. Courage means it just overcomes fear. So if you're scared about taking risks, let's say starting your own company or doing something that you've always wanted to do, just try it. Just go there. and see what happens. And you may fail on the way there. You may realize it's not for me. You may realize that I'm not very good at this, and that's fine. But having that courage to at least start and try is important. And so that's kind of the theme for this idea of courage. But I want to go over it anyway because I think this is one of those more important ones that a lot of people don't have, and even less of when it comes to the era of uncertainty. So courage is a willingness to take risks, plain and simple. It means possibly having failure. It means people that don't take risks aren't likely to move forward, or unlikely to grow. Courage is necessary to create change. So you need to be able to create change and instill change in others. Courage allows you to grow. Growth is for progress. Progress allows for life. Organizations that naturally fail to complacency or stagnancy don't grow. Okay, usually because they're afraid. Usually because they're afraid of failure. I think one of my favorite signs I saw somewhere says failure has killed more dreams than doubt has killed more dreams than failure ever has. So not having the courage in yourself to dream, not having the courage in yourself to pursue what you want. I know one thing, I can't say it's something I focus a lot on because I spend a lot of time teaching and doing research, but one thing that some of my students when I was at Butler mentioned to me, like, you have a really fun voice, that you are pretty good at talking on videos, but the problem is your voice is so monotone and quiet and kind of steady that you tend to put people to sleep. So, but it's a decent voice. So why don't you try doing voice acting? So I tried this at one point. I made a track that has different voices I did and submit them. So every now and then I'll have somebody contact me and saying, hey, will you do a voiceover for this commercial? Or will you voice over this type of character for this reading book, or whatever it might be, audio recording? And that's purely courage. It's not anything in my area, but I've had several voiceover gigs now just because I had the courage to say, you know what, I'm just going to try this and see what happens. So I advocate the same for you. Like, try something just to see what happens. Now, what's the benefit? What's the worst that can happen? No. There's a gentleman, I'm trying to remember his name. He did this thing. He went on a quest for 365 days in 1 year and just asked somebody a question that was more outlandish, just to see what would happen. And he kind of built himself up. The goal was to get used to hearing no, the failure. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do. Hey, can I run the college for one day? No, you can't. No, I'm sorry, you can't do that. Can I go to wherever? Can I walk into the jail and talk to some people just for fun? No, you can't, right? Can I just have free donuts? I need a dozen donuts. Or walking up to people and asking for $100. Hey, can I have $100? No, you can't. And he was just trying to get used to hearing the word no, so that failure wasn't a problem. He was getting used to it. And it turned out that in his experiment, what he didn't expect was more people said yes than no, which was strange. So he groomed elephants, went in and washed elephants. He rode and drove a police car for a day. He got money from people. He would just ask, hey, can I borrow $50? Can I have $50? And he'd go up to people on the street and they'd say, well, what do you need it for? And if you gave him a reason like, oh, I just was thinking about getting groceries sometime next week or sometime this week, people would give him the money. Or if he wanted to run a company, hey, can I run the company for a day? People would say, okay, just for one day. So more the failure wasn't being told no as much as it was just not trying or not asking, because people had this preconceived notion, oh, they're going to say no, I'm not even going to try. So I know that sounds like a inspiring conversation for meeting the love of your life, etc. Just ask and see what happens. So leaders they use courage they're inspiring, right? We're going to do something great together. They have the courage to do so and say, we're going to try this. It may fail, but they're going to try. Leaders begin willingness to take charge and be courageous. And again, it's not the absence of fear. It's just overcoming the fear. When leaders find courage in an unknown situation, people are likely to follow. So have you ever been there as a follower where somebody has said, we're going to do this? And you're like, well, okay, we'll see what happens, but you follow anyway. Because boy, if it works, that would be great. Oh, there you go. Leading through the dark with uncertainty. If the luminous path were lit, followers wouldn't need leaders. They could just do it themselves. So that uncertainty that's there, having the courage is important. Leaders are not always first to see the need for change, but they're the first to act. And once they move away from the pack, they're positioned to lead. So you may not be the first one to say, oh, there's a problem, we need to fix it. but you may be the first person to say, okay, let's make this happen. Let's get it done. Leaders hold on to fear and lead anyway. Eventually, a leader's lust for progress overwhelms their reluctance to take risks. So they're going to take risks anyway, just because I want to explore, I want to see. It's like going down that road that I wonder where this road leads to, and just taking it, just trying to figure out what happens. Failure is part of the success as long as we learn from our mistakes, and I think you guys probably already know that. So courage is just the willingness to take risks and overcome fear. It doesn't mean you're not cautious. Courage doesn't mean reckless. Okay, reckless, you can still be cautious and prepared. If you're going to go climb a mountain, you're not going to climb a mountain just saying, okay, I'm going to go do it, and just put on your shoes and have a backpack with a few things and that's it. No, you're going to be cautious. You're going to have oxygen tanks. You're going to have breathing apparatus. You're going to have food and water and whatever else you need to go up there. Whatever, I don't know if climbing gear is needed, etc. You're going to be prepared. You're going to be cautious, but you're willing to take the risk and try it. Leaders are cautious because they care about the people who follow them. And that's really back to that servant leadership concept mentioned on Wednesday. So leaders care about the people that follow them. They care about who's there. They care about growing other people, etc. It's not about you. It's about others growing, becoming better. When the leader gets better, everybody gets better. Leaders try not to hurt those who put their trust in them. We talked about trust last time. Leaders understand the roles in confidence and caution. Courage requires both, right? You got to be confident enough to say that we can do something, but you still have to be cautious that there are pitfalls, there will be failures, and how do you overcome those? Which of the following is more like you? So if we had to categorize cautiousness and being careful, which one of these statements most reflects your values? So careful is cerebral, fearful is emotional, or careful is fueled by emotion or by information, fearful is fueled by imagination. Careful calculates risk, fearful avoids risk. Careful wants to achieve success, fearful wants to avoid failure. And careful is concerned about progress, while fearful is concerned about protection. So out of all 5 of these, which ones do apply to you the most? Like, how would you agree or agree with disagree? You don't have to tell me, this is more rhetorical. But how would you go about doing something like this? It's kind of like training your brain. How do I take more risks? How do I get to the point where if I'm leading other people and they're looking at me, the lights come on, the spotlight's on me, what am I going to do? So what does it mean to be cautious? Well, I believe it's impossible to do in any field, but if it could be done, what fundamentally could change my business? In other words, how do I stand out from the rest of the pack? How do I beat my competitors? How do I go ahead and do that? What makes me better? What makes me stand out? Identify the opportunities and challenges. Remember the SWOT analysis a long time ago for those who are in business, and have the courage to lead, right? What are some pitfalls and what are some things that I could do really well? And I'm going to try to lead us in that direction. I'm going to have the courage to get people on board that they're willing to do that. They're willing to improve the business, improve the industry, etc. So there are 3 expressions of courage. The first is the courage to say no. How many people are great at saying no? No, I can't do that. No, I don't have the responsibility. We just talked about competence. Let's delegate that to somebody else. No, I can't do that. No, I don't have the time. No, I'm not have the skills. No, I don't. Somebody else can do that. Often people don't say no. If we had the ability to say no a lot, then we probably focus on the 80% of the things that we do really well. The courage to face current reality. Sometimes current things are like college is a mess right now because of coronavirus. So how do we take charge and kind of lead our way through it? Take people through the dark room. And then the courage to dream. So I never know what's going to happen until we dream big. What could we do at the college to make things better? One of my initiatives I still want to do at the college, and again, the courage to face current reality. One of the biggest problems I see is we have so many student athletes, and we have so many student athletes who are good athletes and really love sports, but we are not particularly good as a college in supporting them athletically or even academically. I think there are a lot of students that would like to do like a sports management program and tied with sports communication, or even just as simple as you need your own workout center, because there's an athletic workout center and there should be a normal student workout center. But right now we're sharing them with each other, which means less time on the machines, less time with the equipment. I would like to find a way around that so that there's actually 2 different facilities that people can work out and exercise, etc. So if we dreamed, what would that look like? If we dreamed, where would that be? If we dreamed, what would be needed? If we dreamed and did a GoFundMe, how much would we need to buy new equipment? What could it be? What should it be? Write it on the wall, broadcast it. So expressions of courage, the ability to say no, the ability to face current reality, the courage to dream. Now, facing current reality, I was just thinking sometimes it's a mess, but we need to start somewhere. Have you ever been in a messy garage before? Where your parents' garage or your garage or whatever it might be, and you look at it and you're like, oh man, I need to clean this place, but I don't even know where to start. Or maybe it's a bedroom. Oh, and it's a lot easier just to kind of turn our eyes and look away and say, this is not for me. I'll worry about it later. But the leader doesn't do that. The leader tries to find a way to get around that. It's not postponing it. It's actually trying to find a way, have the courage to fix the problem. You know, every time I walk into this kitchen, it's a mess. We got to find a way to keep this kitchen clean, whatever it might be. So that is all I have. That has been a half hour of our time today. I wanted to go over at least one C. We got over two. So we have both competence, delegate your responsibilities to other people, your strengths, your weaknesses or somebody else's strengths. Find out who those people are, and then work together as a team. And then finally, courage, the willingness to take risks and overcome adversity, overcome the fear that's there. Again, the fear doesn't go away. The fear is always there. The fear of failure, the fear of what if I mess up, people stop following me, the fear of if I take a risk and I lose the company money, what am I going to do? I think I mentioned, and for those that have had in Business 101, I took a risk and changed something on a design when I worked at Bell Laboratories, and it cost the company $1 million because I didn't understand the question that was being asked of me. And that's okay. I mean, as my boss said, we just spent $1 million training you on something. But that idea that is there, that taking that risk or willingness to take the risk, but being cautious can actually pay off. People tend to follow courageous leaders. So I'll stop there. I'll stop the slide share and I'll stop the recording.